Hello and welcome to the St. Andrews Society of Los Angeles podcast. Each episode will bring you the latest news from the St. Andrews Society of Los Angeles, as well as fascinating interviews with entertainment personalities, government leaders, and community advocates. St. Andrews Society of Los Angeles, where Scotland meets the City of Angels. Let's get started. Our guest interviewer today is Sally Olmsted. Sally is a recognized strategic corporate communications expert with a deep experience in public relations. She is also a trustee for the St. Andrews Society of Los Angeles. Our guest today is television producer and writer Toni Graphia. Toni is an award-winning writer and producer who first began her career as a researcher on the television series China Beach. She also created and produced Orleans and won the Peabody Award for the 2005 season of Battlestar Galactica. Toni has worked on Roswell, HBO's Carnival, J.J. Abrams' Alcatraz, Grey's Anatomy, and many others, and is also most recently known as the executive producer for the Starz Channel hit series Outlander. Please welcome to the show the amazing Toni Graphia. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've been working hard and on Outlander, and I got a letter from Kimberly, who's the head of the St. Andrews Society, and said, do you want to come on and talk about Scotland? I was just like, yes, because I absolutely love Scotland, and it's in my heart now. From the work we've done there, it's been such an amazing experience that I would like nothing better than to spend an afternoon talking about Scotland with you guys. I was thrilled to be asked, so thank you again for having me.
Well, this is absolutely our pleasure and our honor. I am personally a rabid fan of the show and have been since day one, so I'm personally really excited to be talking to you. And for what we do at the St. Andrews Society is present Scottish culture and history to our members and to the community here in LA. So what a wonderful thing to do, to have a job where you get to weave together Scottish history and culture in, old times, new times. What a fantastic job you have to be able to do this all day long, which is amazing, and the show that you've brought to life. But what I'd like to do is start at the beginning about your how you ended up getting interested in the entertainment business, and how did you end up in writing and producing?
Well, I've always loved writing since I was really young. I tried writing a novel when I was like 10 or 12 years old. And I started kind of as an English major, and then segued into communications, which is kind of a catch-all for you don't really know what you want to do. I also studied some journalism. And after college, I got a job in advertising. It was my first job. I was a copywriter. I loved it. But I found it kind of unsatisfying because I would always want to write more than what I was being paid to write. And my best story is that I was supposed to be writing greeting cards one time, and the graphic designer designed the card, and then they passed it along to me, and I put some words in it. So I was sitting at my little desk, and I would just fill up the whole card, and my boss would come in and be like, "What's the deal? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm writing a little story," and he's like, "It's a greeting card, so just need one line here," and I couldn't do it. I can't say anything in one line. So after a while, I was realizing, I don't know if this is the job for me. Yeah, I don't want those limitations. I want to be able to say more. And I knew that I was like a storyteller at heart. But I hadn't studied that in college. The only thing I'd done is taken one screenwriting class as an elective. But when I took that, I did fall in love with that medium. I just thought, it's people talking back and forth, and I can sort of play both roles and what people would say to each other and tell a story verbally like that. I didn't really think of the visuals. I'm not strong with visuals and camera work, but I love words and just to imagine conversations between people. So really, if I hadn't taken that one course, I wasn't a film studies major or anything like that, but I went to UCSB as the college I went to. And if I hadn't had this professor who was Paul Lazarus, who used to be a studio head, and he really changed my life by that one screenwriting class, and that helped me to leave advertising and segue into to TV when I got my job at China Beach as a researcher, as you mentioned.
Well, we are glad you took that one elective class because it's changed a lot of lives, your life and the lives of TV fans around the world who have gotten to enjoy so many of the shows that you work on. And in one of your early shows was Orleans that you worked on in the 1990s. And
yeah.
We know you're from Louisiana. So how much of your personal and family life actually crept into that show?
That show, there's quite a lot. In fact, most of the show, I would say, is loosely based on stuff from my own life, which I didn't find all that interesting. And I had worked on several TV shows, and I was working with one of my early mentors, John Sacred Young, who had hired me to give my first job on China Beach. I had started as a researcher, and they gave me an opportunity after working there a while to pitch, and I pitched, and they bought one of them, let me write a script, and they liked it and put me on staff. So I hadn't worked with John in a few years. I'd done some other shows, but I was visiting John, and I had just come back from visiting my family in Louisiana, and I was telling John in his office, he was like, tell me about your trip. And I told him some few crazy stories about my family and my relatives and some friends back home. And he was listening, and he goes, that's a show. And I said, what? No, it's not. That's just my crazy family. It was normal to me, but to him, it was fascinating. He goes, we're going to sell this show. And he literally picked up the phone, called CBS and said, we're coming in tomorrow to pitch. And I'm like, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? Put the phone down. He's like, no, we're going in tomorrow. And we literally went into the pitch, and he said, he just, was Les Moonves at the time, I believe was the head of CBS. And we went in there, and he said, he just turned to me and he goes, tell me about your family. Tell me the stuff you told me the other day. And I was terrified. And I just started started talking about it and told him, and boom, it sold. Then I actually had to write it. So, and it was a little crazy for me because I'd actually, every young person wants to get away from their hometown and make their own way. And I'd come out to Los Angeles actually to be a punk rocker was my goal. And that did not work out, thank God. But I, at the time, played guitar and thought I was going to be, a punk rocker. And so I hadn't been to Louisiana in many years, except for maybe a visit to family here and there. So getting to go back and rediscover like New Orleans, I got an apartment in the French Quarter, and I kind of fell in love with my hometown again. And so it was like coming full circle somehow. And I got to hire my father as a technical advisor. He's a judge. But my whole family is like cops and lawyers and law enforcement. My grandfather was a sheriff. I mean, I'm the only like weirdo that like left and moved to LA, so it was a thrill and a joy to go back, and I love and miss New Orleans. And it was a really, really rewarding experience. So I'm glad I had it. But that was many years ago. It only lasted, 6 or 8 episodes. But I believe it had like 12 million viewers at the time, which back then, when there was only, 3 channels in the 90s, that was a lot. Today, if you had that, that's more than a lot of the popular shows today, but there wasn't as much on the TV landscape. So now, I think it was before its time, but it's always really special to my heart.
That's one of the things that I noticed when I was going through your IMDb list of all the shows that you worked on. One of the common elements is that you write a lot of characters for strong women. And also there seems to be a medical through line that a lot of them have medical expertise. And even with Claire on Outlander, you've got a really strong woman with a medical background. So how did you find yourself going back to this recurring theme?
I don't think I was looking for that in particular. It was more like it found me. Certain shows found me. My mom's a nurse, and I have no medical interest or knowledge of any kind. I like, faint at the sight of blood. But what I found interesting was women in extraordinary circumstances. And it's interesting when I was thinking about this interview and going back and thinking that in China Beach, there was a strong woman, Dana Delaney, playing Colleen McMurphy, who was in the Vietnam War. And Claire, of course, back in time, both what were, nurses, doctors, women in extraordinary circumstances out of their depths and having to navigate a world that they know nothing about, really. So that's what drew me to them. And there's just so many parallels, basically, with the first show I ever did and now this last show. Well, I hope it's not my last show, but this show that so many years later, there is kind of a theme that runs through where there's a lot of strong women. But like I said, I didn't really choose them. They chose me, and I was lucky enough to be on shows with strong women, and I love writing about them.
So our current strong woman, Claire, how did you get introduced to the Outlander project overall?
Yeah, it's a funny story because I had worked with Ron Moore on 3 shows before, on Roswell, on Carnival for HBO, which I love, and Battlestar Galactica. But I hadn't seen him in a few years. And I had read a little blurb that Outlander had been bought and sold and was going to get made by Ron. And I was like, oh, that looks really interesting. And then Meryl Davis called me out of the blue and said, hey, would you like to come interview for Outlander? And I was like, sure, I would work for Ron in a minute. I'd do anything he was doing. So, and they were like, can you come in tomorrow for an interview? And they're like, and by the way, it's based on a book, so you might want to take a look, read the book. And me being like, I had never even heard of Outlander at the time. So I was like, I'll stop by Bookstar and I'll pick up the book on the way over there, and I'll parking lot, I'll get there a little early, I'll flip through the book, and I'll just, I'll nail it. And of course I went to Bookstar and I'm like, do you have Outlander? And the lady comes back with giant 1,000-page book. And so I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna be able to read this. And I drove to the office. I sat in the parking lot. I'm like, oh my God, okay, Jamie Clare. Seems to be a lot of Jamie Clare in here. And then I went to his office. I'm like, Ron, so good to see you. And he's like, what do you think of the book? And I'm like, it's great, love it. Jamie Clare, oh my God, they're amazing, right? And he's like, yeah, it's such a good book. And I go, yeah. And then he starts talking about Scotland and the history. And he was all like, Bonnie Prince Charlie, because Ron's like a historian. He knows everything. And he started talking about Culloden and the Jacobites. And I just was like, oh, Bonnie Prince Charlie, man, can you believe that dude? Oh, and I just faked it. I faked it. And so then, luckily, I think I got the job, and he knew my work. I knew him. And once I got hired and I did read the book, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. The whole book series is amazing. Diana is an amazing writer. I did fall totally head over heels in love with the book. I did not read all of the books. I'm one of the writers that only reads one at a time. And in that first season, we had 4 writers plus Ron, and 2 of us had read all the books and were really familiar. And then 2 of us had never read the books. And that way we had a good mix of who knew what was coming down the road, because that's valuable, but also it was fresh to some people who didn't know what was going to happen. And I always say that, when I was writing The Devil's Mark and Claire and Galis becoming friends, and I wanted that female friendship, and I didn't want to know that seasons later Claire was going to cut Galis's head off, which actually someone told me about. And I was like, I thought they were joking. I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And then a few books later, I found out, oh my God, that did happen. But if I would have known that, I think I would have written them differently. I don't want to know who falls in love. I don't want to know who dies. I don't want to know things that are coming, because I need to be in the moment for me when I'm writing. So it was it was great. But, you know, I had no idea when that happened that I would be on this show seven seasons later. We just got picked up for season 7, yay. And we were actually just starting to talk about it. And I had only been on the show at 2 years at the most up until that time. And so this is the longest I've been on the show and the most rewarding. And I'm so grateful to Ron and Meryl that they gave me this job, and that it's been like probably the most rewarding experience that I've had in television in my career.
So you have the meeting with Ron. Ron calls and says, okay, you're in. What was your level of excitement like when they told you you were going to work on this, you know, the first show, you know, to get started?
Well, I did not know it was shooting in Scotland at first. And I had been on a lot of shows on like the Warner Brothers, Backlot, and Universal Studios, and those were great, but I had kind of gotten used to it. You know, studios are like 5 minutes from my house. And I was kind of ready for a change of scenery, but I thought that, you know, I made a joke when I got hired. I go, I hope they're not shooting this in Albuquerque or somewhere, because one show was on, they talked about shooting in Albuquerque and it's like the desert, you know, and so, but that's what TV does sometimes, Hollywood. They'll put you in a place that looks nothing like and figure they can wing it. And so I was making jokes about Albuquerque, and then one day I came in and Ron's like, it ain't Albuquerque. We're going to Scotland. And we were like, oh my God. And so I had never been to Scotland and knew nothing about Scotland. Had to, of course, buy a lot of coats. I did not own a coat, never had a down coat in my life, didn't know what I had to learn about, thermals and wool socks and sock liners and boots. And I mean, it cost me thousands of dollars practically it was like, I had to suit up, for this. Wool scarves. I have drawers of wool scarves now. And I usually go in the summer, but even then it's freezing. To me, it's freezing, and being from the swamps, and then living in California, I have to say it was great to have the change of scenery. But it was an adventure, and it was such an adventure, and I was able to travel and supervise episodes. We block shoot 2 episodes at a time. So you usually go for one of your episodes and supervise one other. And it takes 2 to 3 months there. So I'd be there 2 to 3 months at a time, have an apartment, the whole deal, and it was great. I just had no idea it would go on this long, but I'm glad that it has.
So because the book is set in Scotland, and you were being dispatched to go over there, how did you ramp up your research about Scottish history that was woven through a fictional book that also had real things going on to get you ready for the first season?
Well, I read a lot of books on Scotland, and because I'm just a research hound, I love research, I love history. And like I said, I had a journalism background. Matt Roberts, also who I work with, who we started together, and he's now the showrunner. We both come from a researcher background. That's how we got into TV, and we just immersed ourselves in it. I remember going to a Scottish festival at the Queen Mary, and thinking, oh, it'll be like this. And it was great. It was great and fun, but of course it was nothing like the real deal. I mean, it was similar to the real deal, but you can't tell from a festival, but it was fun. But I was like, oh, there's sheep. There's, Scotch. There's all, it was a little taste of what was to come. And I think it's important that we shot in Scotland. And I know one of the reasons that we did is because, for authenticity, our show's always been hugely, hugely about authenticity and shooting in the real places, being able to work with a Scottish crew who can always step in and, correct us if we're getting something wrong. We have historians, we have dialect coaches, we have in every department from costume to, the armory, to the set designers, the prop makers. It's an incredible crew, and they will get things down to the smallest detail, which is something that I don't think we could have done in America. And because it was really important to us to not fake it and to not just do a TV version of the books. We really wanted it to feel almost like a documentary. And so, hats off to our crew and our people, because we've got a lot of the same crew that we started out with in season 1, and they are just as passionate today as they were in season 1 about running down whatever that is, that thing we need, that's authentic, whether it's a Viking sword from the 5th century or whatever it is, you ask them for this or that and they make it happen. It's still shocking to me. And like, you just write something and they do it and they find a way to do it. And they just go above and beyond. And I have so much respect for them, and so lucky to get to work with people that are that passionate about a show after this much time.
So on that passion, when you worked on the first episode for Sassenach, did you have any gut feeling that this was going to turn into a huge, massive franchise?
Well, we knew the books had a huge following and a lot of really, really dedicated fans, because Diana has done such a great job over the years. She's very interacts with the fans, has a huge following herself. She has a dialogue with them constantly. So we kind of knew, but and we knew that we had a responsibility to the fans of the books to keep the spirit of the books, not change it too much, not disappoint them, but at the same time bring something of ourselves to the project. And I think we did a good balance of that. And I think the fans have been gracious and understanding about how we sometimes have to change things to make it, to make a 1,000-page book into 12 episodes, 12 chunks. They know that that's something we have to do. They love the books and love the show, but at this point we have a lot of fans too that had not read the books. So we're really proud that we brought some new people in, and it's been very rewarding because the fans, we love our fans. They're so nice to us. They, they've just been so supportive, and we try to do the book justice and make them happy. And it's been so rewarding.
And on the theme of the books, once Outlander took off as a series, and there are many books that Diana Gabaldon has written, how has it changed the way you interact with her as the author of the master story, and how you work to turn it into, a beautiful visual thing for all the fans?
We talked to her. She reads all the scripts. She sees all the cuts. She's written some scripts for us. It's been really fun to interact with her. I always love seeing her. I always try to kind of pick her brain about what's coming. She's complimented us in, one of my favorite compliments of hers is that she'll say that we do a good job of throwing all the cards in the air and putting them together in a new way. Because we had to do that sometimes. Like on season 5, we pulled things from book 6 into season 5. We do the books, but we just put the puzzle pieces together maybe in a different way, because we want to surprise the fans too. We don't want them to constantly know, oh, I know what's coming. So we do things, make some decisions, such as keeping Murtaugh alive. He dies earlier in the books, but we love that character. So we were kind of tentative about, asking Diana, like, hey, we got this idea to keep Murtaugh alive. What do you think? And I think she, to her, she's always said, well, to me, he's gone, but I understand that you want to keep him around and why you do. And she was very supportive of us in doing that. And we said, it's only because you created a character that we love so much that we can't let him go. And so I think she understands. I'm sure it's strange as an author to you have to have a lot of trust to let this group of people, these TV people, take your baby, do something else with it. But we're always super conscious of that. And I think we have a great working relationship with Diana, and I have the ultimate respect for her.
Well, I think it's an excellent decision to keep Murtaugh alive.
Yeah.
And on the subject of emotional scenes and episodes, what would you say have been amongst your most challenging episodes or scenes to produce through the years? They're all so emotional and there's a lot of complexity, but I'm sure there are some that have been harder than others.
Definitely the episode that always comes to mind when I get this question is The Devil's Mark, because that is the witch trial episode, and it was early on. I think it was the first season. We had to shoot the witch trial in which Galis Duncan, as you know, one of the things she does, to shock everyone at the end and allow Claire to escape is, she disrobes. And in the book, the scene of the trial or whatever takes place outside. I think it's in the town square or by the river or something. And when our crew went to Kuras, the city, the little town where we were going to shoot it, there's a little town square where Gaelis's house is. We were just, several of us producers and location guys scouting it. And we're looking around the town square, and all around the town square, we look up and there's windows, and there were people with iPhones, and they were filming us just as we were scouting. We weren't even doing anything. And suddenly I was like, we're going to have an undressed woman at some point in this scene. And there's cameras up there all over. And then we realized kind of at the last minute that we weren't going to be able to shoot that out in the open public. And we're like, we need a closed building. Where are we going to find this? Like we're pretty close to shooting at that point. And so we went and found this little tiny church in Tibermore. And I think it was either abandoned or hadn't been used in years, hadn't been even opened. There were big chain locks on it. And they opened it up, and it was dusty and dark inside. It was just a mess. And Gary Steele, our very talented set designer, was like, give me a couple days, I can fix this up. And we're like, okay, let's go for it. And so at the very last minute, I rewrote a bunch of stuff in the script. The crew came in and just fixed up the church. And we ended up shooting in that church. And one of the issues we had was to fit 100 to 150 supporting artists, the background people in. And they had to be in the church for the witch trial for 8 days. And so in Los Angeles, we have our supporting artists. They're kind of professionals who do this on lots of shows, and they do it for a living. But in Scotland, it was more like we put out a call, and the people from the surrounding towns who were kind of, curious. Some of them do it professionally, but a lot of them just come for the day when we need large crowds like that. And, they were very curious, but after a day or two, most of them are like, okay, I've seen enough. This is a lot of waiting around, a lot of hot lights. We don't want to, bye-bye, and I don't blame them. But we were like, listen, we got 150 people. If half of them don't come back after the second day, we got 8 days to shoot, and we're going to have a half-empty church. And if we can even round up new people at the last minute, they're not going to fit the costumes, which have been fitted to these people. So how are we going to keep them here for 8 days? So Mike Barker, our director, had a genius idea to say, you know what? Let's shoot it in order, like a real trial, which is something we rarely do because we usually, shoot out of order. And he said, and we're going to we brought in 2 cappuccino trucks. We brought in fans because it was freezing outside. And in this tiny church, packed like sardines, it was boiling hot inside under the lights. And the poor people had to go from the freezing and the rain inside to the boiling hot. So we had water, we were passing out water. We had coffee for them. And what we did was we just didn't tell them anything. We just told them it's a witch trial. And every day when they left, the director and myself stood at the door, like shook everyone's hand, thanked them for coming, said, I hope you'll come back tomorrow. And thank God, because it held their interest, because they were kind of caught up in wanting to know what happened to this witch. It was like they were coming to watch a real trial. And I think that kept them there because never did we lose one single person. Every person came back for 8 straight days under really difficult circumstances. And I applaud them. They were the real heroes of that episode. And we did not tell them when it was time for Gaelis to disrobe and scream like the banshee and the devil woman that she was. We didn't tell them. We were like, let's not tell them, just see what they do. And they were all keyed up, and they'd been there for the whole trial. So when Gaelis at the end does her thing, they went insane. They were crazy. It was crazy. They screamed. They crawled over the pews. It was like mass chaos, and it was exactly what we wanted. So everything you're seeing there, all the reactions when they grabbed Gail, they were climbing at her. We were like, I hope she's going to be okay. We had stunt guys posed as the guys that were going to lift her up and carry her out. And we always had pitched it like, let's do it like a concert, like a rock concert where you crowd surf across the top of the people. So the stunt guys had to lift her way up because people were just clawing at her and stuff. And it's
Wow.
all real. And it was one of the most fun things we shot, but it was one of the most challenging for all the reasons that I just said. Yeah.
Wow. I would have never guessed. How are things going with season 6? With COVID has caused innumerable delays. You're actually working remote from LA and time shifting to connect with Scotland. How is all that going?
It's going really, really well. We've been shooting for a few months. They're extremely vigilant over there about safety, and we've had no issues so far. And I'm very just proud of everybody of how they've pulled together. Everyone wanted to come back to work, but safety was first. So our team is still there. We're on the phones, we're on Zoom calls early in the morning because of the time difference. And then we stay up really late. And so we're still doing some rewrites and production meetings and read-throughs, and we're all of us are on Zoom. And it's somehow more exhausting than being there, because when you're there, I don't know, there's fun and adrenaline, and it's exhausting to sort of do it all, remotely. It's frustrating for us. So it's it's great to be back filming again. And it's been a long year for, God knows, for everybody. And we're just lucky that we are able to work remotely. So I feel for everybody in the pandemic, and we just, I hope it's all over soon, and that life gets back to normal for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, speaking of things getting back to normal, and the story you're telling us about how you kind of had to buy coats and everything else to move to Scotland, which was amazing. How long were you actually living in Scotland?
Like I said, we go for a block at a time, which is usually about 3 months. And I went the first season, and the second season, I get a flat, I get my favorite grocery stores, my favorite coffee shops. I'm set up over there. There were a couple seasons in the middle where I didn't go at all, because the writing was so intense on those seasons. I was concentrating on the writer's room during those seasons, and I missed it, but I was working hard over here. And then last season, season 5, before COVID, I actually went twice. I went for the Ballad of Roger Mack, which was the Battle of Alamance episode. And it was my episode. I really wanted to be there for that big episode. And I supervised that and the silent movie episode. And then, which was written by Danny Barrow. And then I went back for the finale for Never My Love, which I co-wrote with Matt Roberts. And that was a really special episode, a really challenging episode, because of all the dreamscapes of the future that Claire was dreaming of. And it was a tricky episode. I wanted to be there for that one, so I actually went twice. But I love it. I love it. I get very attached to the place. I was attached to, my lovely neighbors I got to know, and I just miss it when I'm not there, because it really feels like home to me. There's something about it that I just feel like I belong there. And there's it leaves a space when I haven't been for a while.
I totally get that. And speaking of stuff like that, is there any places, both Outlander related and kind of personal fun related, that you really love, like experiences or things that people should go and see when they're in Scotland, or that you personally miss?
Yeah, I do. One of the best things about working on the show are the location scouts, because that's where I get to, usually I'm locked in my cubby, writing, but when I get in a van or bus with all of our, camera people and location managers, and we go on these scouts, they pick you up early in the morning and you go all over the place, and it's like a tour, I get like a free tour, and I go and get to see, go up into the Highlands. We drive for hours and hours. Sometimes we don't get back till late at night. And some of the places I've gone, we go, Perth. Let's see, I jot a few of them down. Perth, Ayrshire, Pitlochry. I really love the little town of Pitlochry. Kinlochrannoch, where we have the Standing Stones. Dunkeld is one of my favorite places. I would love to see the islands. I've never been to the islands. I'm dying to go to the Isle of Skye and dying to go to the islands. I haven't been there. I've been to Troon and North Berwick on the coast that I love. And I finally made it to St. Andrews this past season. The place where we shot, the finale was near St. Andrews. And my story about St. Andrews is that we were driving through St. Andrews and my driver just stopped all of a sudden. It just slammed on the brakes. He said, get out, get out. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? And he goes, come with me, come with me. And he brings me to this little bridge and he goes, go stand on the bridge. Give me your phone. Go stand on the bridge. And I'm like, what is this? And he's like, just trust me. So I go stand on this bridge. He starts taking pictures of me. And then he goes, come on, we got to go. And I go, why? Where are we? And then I notice there's a golf course and there's golf balls flying by me. So I run back to the van and he goes, do you know anyone who golfs? And I said, well, my brother and a few other friends. He goes, send him this picture right now. And so I emailed the picture to them, and within 5 minutes, I'm in Scotland, driving through the rain on the way to the set, because it was like 6 a.m. and I get all these emails back. Oh my God, how did you get on the old golf course? And then I find out that bridge is like hugely famous, and it's the bridge, and everyone goes there. And I love that picture of me there, and I loved St. Andrews. Some of the other favorite places that we filmed is I loved Glasgow Cathedral, where we made the hospital in Paris, where Claire worked with Mother Hildegard. That is a stunning building. Just so much history, and it's so old. And when you're in there, you just feel all the ghosts in that building. I loved it. And the cloisters at Glasgow Uni, we shot in for one of my episodes, and it was supposed to be Harvard University. And I have a friend that went to Harvard, and she watched the episode, and she called in and said, hey, they don't have cloisters at Harvard University. And I go, well, they do now, because that was our Harvard, and it's beautiful. I love the university. And I love all the little farm shops. I would encourage everyone to go. I mean, we don't really have those in America, but every town we'd be filming in, my first question would be, where's the farm shop? So if we were in Sterling, I'd be like, and the drivers know everything, and they'd be like, okay, 5 minutes down the road, there's a farm shop. And so I would sneak away at lunch, or, on the way to the set, stop and buy veggies and stuff and produce and bakery items to bring home or to snack on the set. And sometimes I would bring my laptop and just set up like a little office. So the farm shops were my office everywhere we went, and people would get to know me and be like, hey, Toni, I'm going to bring you your favorite soup and your scone. And like, they knew my order everywhere I went, because they were used to seeing us, and the people were so gracious and so nice to us. Everywhere we went, people love Outlander and were totally supportive of us and welcomed us. And there's just not a nicer place in the whole world. When I'm not filming, I went to Edinburgh. I got to make sure I say it right. Edinburgh. Literally, I took the train there, and when I got out of the train, jaw dropping is a cliche, but my jaw literally dropped when I stepped off the train and saw that city. It is gorgeous. It is magical. It's hard to believe it's even a real place. It's the most beautiful city I've ever seen. I love the monument to the writer, Sir Walter Scott. It's the largest monument to a writer ever. So I'm like, hey, a city that has a monument this big to a writer, you gotta love. I love going there and just sitting under the monument and thinking about writing and what it means to me. I love that city. I'm usually too busy. Honestly, I don't get to do much and travel and do much on my own. It's not connected to the show. But this past year, I finally got to go to the Tattoo, which I'd always wanted to go to. Stunning. I mean, I'd heard about it, but you cannot describe it in words. I just was there I was just knocked out. When they played Scotland the Brave, I got choked up. I mean, and I got to go to the Fringe Festival for the first time, because everyone was like, you got to go to the Fringe Festival. I'd never been able to get away to go to that. And I love that. I mean, that's a once in a lifetime experience. And I love it. I'm convinced I must be Scottish somewhere in my blood. I've got Irish. I'm mostly Italian, but got a little bit of Irish, and I'm convinced, and it's Northern Ireland, so I'm convinced that maybe somewhere far back in the line, there was some Scots that went over to Northern Ireland, and somehow I've got some Scottish blood. If I didn't before, I do now because I love it so much. But my heart really belongs to Glasgow, and I know I find it beautiful. I love the architecture in Glasgow, but the people, I mean, there's a motto there that people make Glasgow, and that is so true because I love the people. They are the nicest people. And they just, like I said, welcomed us. And there's just something great about that city. It's just, you walk around the streets, and I don't get to walk in LA much at all. We're car people. And, they don't let me drive over there because I'd kill myself on trying to drive on the opposite side of the road. I've learned not to say wrong side of the road. I say, you guys drive on the wrong side of the road. They go, no, you guys drive on the wrong side. So I walk everywhere, and I just feel so good over there that at Glasgow is, to me, that's my city.
Do you have a favorite museum or two in Glasgow?
Well, I love the Museum of Transport, which is right on the river, and that has so many incredible, I never knew that much about transport and all the vehicles, whether it's ships or trains or cars. And they have a tall ship that's docked there. And of course, Ron's company is called Tall Ship. Yeah. And so to go and get to stand on the tall ship and be on it was really a treat. I love that. I love that museum. And I love the National Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh because they have the Jacobite exhibit. And they have all the stuff that I'd read about, and to get to go and get to see it in person, the stuff like Bonnie Prince Charlie's the silver canteen and the stuff that he had when he did the picnic at the Battle of Culloden. I mean, to see some of the things, that's just like, you feel the spirits of the history there, and that was amazing to see the real things that we're just writing about and making up, and there they are. So, and I got to see once the portrait of Bonnie Prince Charlie that I think now hangs in the National Portrait Gallery. That portrait that was painted of him, the only one made in Scotland. That's worth seeing, and that just gives you chills. Just gives you chills to see the face of the man, of someone that was so important in Scottish history, and those are some of my favorites.
So, switching out of Scotland and back to your main life as a writer and producer, do you have a dream project or something that you would love to take on at some point?
I do. I mean, as a writer, as satisfying as Outlander is, sometimes you get itchy to write something else and ideas come. But I don't have that much time. So I don't know when I'd be able to do it because, Diana's so prolific. She's never going to stop writing. And like I said, book 9 coming out this year. And, I could be on Outlander for the next few years. Who knows? I'd love to. We always tell her, you keep writing, we'll keep making them. But I do enjoy the adaptation process so much that I find myself when I'm reading books, I get, this book would make such a good show. And then I call and try to find the option the rights on it, maybe option it for a couple of years and put it on the back burner. And but every time I find a book, I want to do that. And I check on the rights. Reese Witherspoon has already optioned it because she has a book club, and I don't know if she's optioned every book in Hollywood or what for her, for her company. But I kind of curse her, I love her. I do love her acting, and I'm proud that she's a woman, running a company, making these shows. But we must have the same taste because I'm like, I'll say, I bet, don't tell me Reese has it. Yep, she has it. So I'm going to have to find a book that Reese doesn't have. If I want to adapt something. So she has good taste. But I do, so I figure even with shows, sometimes by the time you think of them, someone else is doing it. And so I'm going to have to do something that no one else could do but me, which brings me kind of back to the Orleans kind of thing, where I think I'm going to try to do something from my own life. I've got one story. It's like, characters just come in your head. Stories just come. I don't know from where. I don't have to reach that far for them. They are there when I let them come in. And the only time I really have is when I'm going to bed. And when I'm laying there trying to go to sleep, because I'm kind of a night person and I never sleep, but if I'm laying there trying to fall asleep, I find that there is a set of characters that come into my head. And so I start thinking of scenes in my head, and then I write them down in a notebook. And I've been doing that for a while now. I don't know when it's going to, come to fruition, but someday I think that notebook's going to be full and I'm going to have my show. And that's about all I can do right now, but it's there. I feel like I was meant to be on Outlander. I feel like I've lived in Scotland before in another life. I'm sure I will go back and visit Scotland even after the show's over. And I just hope that I live there in my next life, because I've really fallen in love with it. It's an amazing place, and I do encourage everyone to go. And you can't have a bad experience there. It's just too magical.
Fantastic. Well, Toni Graphia, it has been our pleasure talking to you this afternoon about your career in writing and producing and bringing Outlander to life and all the wonderful things that you've been able to fit in Scotland when you aren't working. So we thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us. And we look forward to watching season 6 when it is ready to come out.
I can't wait for you guys to see season 6. We'll be excited. We'll be holding our breath to see what you guys think, but I think you're really going to like it.
Again, thank you guys so much for checking out another episode of the St. Andrews Society of Los Angeles. Toni, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate
Cheers.
it. Cheers. We will see you guys at our next episode. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the St. Andrews Society of Los Angeles podcast. For more information on the St. Andrews Society of Los Angeles, visit www.standrewsla.org. And don't forget to like our Facebook page, Instagram, and YouTube channels as well. Have a great week, and we'll see you next episode.